Welcome to Blind Shovel, an arts and music podcast. Today I speak with cartoonist and animator Jesse Moynihan. Enjoy.
Jesse Moynihan. Jesse Moynihan. Jesse Moynihan. Jesse Moynihan.
Yo.
Hey, what's up?
Well, good to meet you. I feel like it had to happen eventually, considering you know Neve, obviously, right? You were in a band with Neve, I think.
Yeah,
And,
Neve joined my band with me and my brother. This was before the lockdown. We played 2 shows, and we were in the middle of recording an album when everything got locked down. We were actually in the studio in a studio in Joshua Tree. And the announcement came in like, don't go outside or whatever. And then we were like, I guess finishing this album is on hold now. Yeah, and we never finished it. It's still on my hard drive.
Did you start off, like, from an identity perspective when you were very little? What were you identifying with?
I didn't identify as anything. I had like kind of, I guess I had fantasies, but I didn't think anything, I really didn't know what was possible. So
Right.
I drew comics since I was a kid, since I was as long as I can remember, 5 years old, making up characters, drawing comics. I was super into the Ninja Turtles. I really looked up to Eastman and Laird, and and I grew up with all the like 90s extreme comics stuff, like Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, and all that kind of stuff. So I copied all that kind of stuff. I did fan art of all that stuff. I had my own characters, and I had a buddy named Dave, who was a co-writer, and we would write our own like Ninja Turtle ripoff comics. I had a character named Okami Yamabushi. That was like a wolf samurai,
Nice.
So it was like all ripping off all the anthropomorphic ninja stuff, and but I didn't know, there was no, growing up in Philadelphia or outside of Philadelphia, there was no one telling me it was possible to be a professional cartoonist. The closest I ever got to that was there was an art center near me, an art school, like after school program, where one of the teachers there occasionally drew covers for Dragon magazine.
What's that?
Dragon magazine was Dungeons and Dragons magazine in the 80s. So I tried to get into his class because that was like getting as close to the sun as I could get,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And but I never actually got to his class. I went to that art school when I was a kid during the summer, but I never got in his class. So he was the closest anyone working professionally as an artist or cartoonist or illustrator or anything was that guy. I can't even remember his name, and he wasn't my favorite of the illustrators for Dragon magazine. But,
So it's amazing because you're not that old, but I can even relate to this idea of pre-internet, like not really having great examples of what you could do with a career. But in some ways, I think that creates this, what would you say? Like not like we're blazing trails per se, but you don't have like an exact template to copy. And that can lead to some really interesting and divergent ways of trying to build a career, I think, where nowadays I think you can kind of like, there's kind of a template, and you probably incorporate social media in that template. So I think that's...
There's tons of people online now telling you the answer. They're like, do it like this. This is how I did it. This is how I'm currently doing it. People at every stage of a career are like always giving free advice on the internet. Whereas in the 80s, there was nothing. Like there was, yeah, that my almost knowing that one dude. And then one time, for some reason, I don't know, this is such a vague memory, but someone my mom knew worked as a producer on the Little Nemo
Wow.
Japanese animation feature film.
Yeah.
Um, and he came over to my house one time, and I was just like starstruck. I hadn't even seen it, and I can't remember his name, and it hadn't come out yet. And he was like, "Yeah, we've been working on it for a really long time." And I was like, "Cool." And that was, I didn't know how to engage with that. I didn't know.
What did your parents think of art or art as a career?
I don't know if they understood. They wanted me to get good grades. They were like worried about my future. So they just cared that I did well in school. And then they encouraged me to draw and stuff. Like they always encouraged me to be creative instead of like playing video games or going
Yeah.
to the mall and stuff like that. So it was always like this big sort of, my mom's Japanese, so I don't know, there's some sort of like tiger mom kind of thing. Like she was like, always be productive, in some way or another. Like, don't be mentally lazy, like, ever. So it was always like she discouraged me from playing video games, from like goofing off with my friends, and more like wanted me to be doing something using my brain, I guess, or my creativity.
Well, yeah, that seems, I mean, you seem very prolific, so I assume that stuck with you.
Yeah, it stuck with me. It drifted away here and there, like in my teens and my early 20s. But then at some point when I got the fear in me, it just like, I just went to that well. I was just like, okay, I'm just going to be like my mom or something.
Which fear?
Fear of dying, I guess.
Sure, sure. Yeah. I mean, I had a similar thing where I went to California for 5 years to try to get rid of that ambition,
Yeah.
but that's not the solution. You have to just reckon with it
Yeah.
and do the best with it what you can. There's like, you're called to certain things, and you have certain, in a more technical sense, I think people have certain computers or computational powers in their head, and it's like you kind of have to roll with it.
Yeah.
You
I
got to
think
figure it out.
Yeah, I think it's more like, I try not to put pressure on myself to be successful, I guess. I just put pressure on myself to be the best I can be, if that makes sense. It's like,
Of course, yeah.
yeah, it's like trying not to have external expectations, but having like really high internal expectations.
But by any objective metric, you're successful externally, right? You would say that?
I would say, yeah. I don't want to downplay. I do okay. I've definitely, the past couple of years I've been weird, but I would say by comparison to myself as a 20 something, 25-year-old, yeah, I'm doing great. Like,
Yeah.
if I just compare myself to myself, 15 years ago or something.
I think even beyond that, doing what you do and making a living is impressive and rare.
Yeah, and it's getting, well, who knows? I can't predict the future, but things are weird right now, I think.
Which weird are you talking about? The animation industry?
Yeah, animation industry, just the general like cost of living in America. So I guess I'm speaking as an American in the animation industry. I guess things are kind of weird.
Sure. No, I've heard that from many people.
Yeah. Yeah. You kind of have to figure out, I don't know. My thought is that you have to figure out alternate paths or something. Like, it's been becoming more and more important to keep your doors open to like different opportunities outside of animation even.
Yeah, I mean, you seem like you explore a lot of different mediums in general. Do you still play music, or is Maker Rising, that was with Neve, is that the last musical
That's
experiment?
the last musical thing I did. That was like, what is it, when the pandemic started, like 4 years ago now? Is that how much time has passed?
I think that might be right.
Which is crazy to think. But yeah, after that happened, like just contending with the lockdown and waiting for it to be over and thinking would be like, oh, okay, one more week, you know,
Sure.
and then, oh, one more month. And then all my like ambition outside of drawing at my desk just like evaporated essentially. So I think I arranged one synthesizer part on the recording in the past 4 years. And I bought a bass. It's sitting in my house. I've never played it.
Nice.
Yeah, it was actually a bass that was the guy who was engineering our album. He had this bass, and I played it like 10 years ago. I've known him for a long time. And I was like, this is the greatest feeling bass I've ever, and sounding bass I've ever played. And so then he was moving out of Joshua Tree and he's selling a bunch of stuff. And I was like, are you selling that bass? And he sold it to me. But it's just
Nice.
I just made my I made a new music studio a couple of weeks ago, actually, in my house. I cleared out one of the rooms and just put all my keyboards and guitars and stuff. So I'm
Do you
trying
yeah. Do you understand the recipe of all this stuff at this point in your life? Like you need this much music, this much comics, this much work, or is that always changing?
I'm always like extremely, I don't know. I'm just like riding a wave of adrenaline, and I don't think about balance too much. I know that I'm supposed to, like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I really should balance my life out. I should try to make an effort to be measured in like what I'm doing, but it's just, I just bounce from one thing to, I'm like, okay, I finished that. Now this. So I finished that. Now this. Now this. This is a big one. I'm just going to put all my eggs into this until I burn out, and then I'll go do this other thing. You know?
Yeah, I never thought about it, but it maybe is antithetical to heroic achievement that one is balanced in their life. It seems like, and it seems, I don't know, I'm just assuming from the work you make that you value the heroic and that kind of, that journey. And I feel like balance doesn't really produce, I mean, it's healthy. I think balance is healthy, but the heroic isn't necessarily healthy.
Right. I don't think it is either. I would like it to be. I would love it if there was a way to be healthy and to like aspire to like the heights of what I want to produce in my life, and to be proud of my work and all that kind of stuff, and do everything I ever imagined I could accomplish in one lifetime. But I haven't figured that out. And, actually I see two therapists, to try to like sort that stuff.
Dueling.
Yeah. I see one like traditional therapist, and then I see one like, more far out therapist, I guess you could say.
That gets me to a question I have in some sense. It seems like you're really interested in, I don't know, like occult symbols. And I saw on the Wikipedia, I think you were raised Quaker. Yeah. Or at least had some Quaker in there.
Yeah.
Do you have a clear spiritual practice or a way to worship? The only reason I ask is I often find that therapists, I mean, I've never been to a therapist, but I guess in some weird way, I've always seen them as at odds with some, like going to church and talking to a priest or something. As I was raised Roman Catholic. I don't think they're antithetical, but I also don't see them as compatible in some weird way. I don't know if you have any sense towards that. I mean,
well, one of the therapists I see currently he's a full-on Jungian therapist. Nice. So he's always like we talk about my dreams a lot. In our conversations, a word will stick out to him, and it's very intuitive. So he'll say to me something, that word resonated with me for some reason. I don't know why. Like, can we explore that? And that might trigger something in me. And we just do this sort of free association stuff. And it gets into, I've even in the therapy session, some therapy sessions, I've drawn he'll give me word prompts, and I'll draw intuitive comics and stuff, and try to get to something, some sort of meaning, maybe that I'm too blocked off to talk about. Because I do have some sort of emotional distance from myself. I've been trying to work through for years and years. But then
what does the other therapist do?
The other therapist does full on like past life regression sort of hypnosis stuff. She goes into not past lives, but she'll go into my past to a traumatic incident and then rewrite it. And then I take my younger self, and then so I've been hanging out with my 5-year-old self for the past couple of weeks.
Oh, wow.
In I guess in my imagination, I don't know, but I took I took a childhood incident, like a traumatic childhood incident that I had that has affected me my whole life. And I rewrote through her hypnosis. I rewrote that incident, and then so that it was positive instead of traumatic. And then I took that childhood moment, and then I brought him with me to like stay with me for the next couple of weeks. And then in my brain, he's just hanging out. I don't know, like he's hanging out on the couch with me right now, And I've never done. I just started seeing this woman because a friend recommended her to me, being like, she was going to do this radical therapy stuff, and it's pretty wild, but it helped me or my friend a lot, she said. So I was like, I'll do anything. I'll try anything. So I tried it. I've been seeing her, and as a compliment to my other therapist, who's I guess more traditional, talk it through kind of stuff instead of taking me on some sort of like hypnosis journey into my past and stuff, which I've never done before. But I'm down to do whatever. I've done things like that in the past, but not in a therapy session. More like, I guess, recreationally, I guess you could say. Yeah, but that's all to sort out stuff. I don't know. I've seen therapists on it. Oh, to answer your question, right. How does that line up with my spiritual, like my upbringing, which my parents were, when I was a kid, my parents were fundamentalist Christians. They were like, speaking in tongues, like that kind of style. And by the time I reached, I don't know, maybe 7, 8, something like that. They kind of drifted away from that. And my mom put me in a Quaker school, because it was one of the better schools in my neighborhood, in the like district I was in. So she just put me in. She didn't have any attachment to Quakers or anything like that. She just heard it was a good school, And so when I was in the school, I think my parents got to understand the Quaker religion. And they were like, oh, we like Quaker beliefs. So they got kind of into it. And they didn't become practicing Quakers or anything like that, but they kept me in the Quaker school system basically for most of my childhood, like through through elementary school. Then I went to public school for middle school and 9th grade, and then they put me back into Quaker school from 10th to 12th grade.
Am I correct in that Quakers do encourage music and art? Yes. Interesting.
Yeah, actually, so the Quaker school I went to had a great art program. And that's sort of where I started to figure out that I could, regardless of what career path, like I could, figure out, I was going to do something in art. I didn't know what exactly. I kind of wanted to make films. I was making lots of home movies and stuff in high school. Just shooting my friends on video cameras. And then, getting sent to the what do you call it, school psychologist and stuff.
Yeah.
When my teacher saw the films I was making and stuff. So yeah, I just wanted to do something creative, and my best friend in high school was also a cartoonist, so he taught me a lot, and our basis of our friendship was revolved completely around drawing and making music. So we were in a punk band and stuff. And
Is that anal?
Yeah, anal sausage. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So
I mean, that's definitely a theme that I find interesting, is the sheer and overt vulgarity that seems to have started from the beginning, which, I went to school in Philly, and I always think of that area as like Ween-ish, the band Ween.
For sure.
And I think there's a live album called Painting the Town Brown, and something about brown, like Ween is often considered brown. Something about that, and that kind of maximal vulgarity, garish, like there's like the Fourth Thunder, whatever all that connection is, that area brings it out.
Even Fourth Thunder was maximalist, but they didn't really go into toilet humor and stuff like that. They were more whimsical, maybe, and stonery. And they also had this air of fine arts, sort of like RISD fine arts kind of thing going on. I think myself, starting from middle school or something, me and all my friends, we were just obsessed with toilet humor. And we were obsessed with, we loved the Dead Milkmen. Like the Dead Milkmen came from Philly. Just humor bands, like novelty joke bands and stuff. Weird Al Yankovic and the Dead Milkmen, Primus, Guar. I loved Guar.
Sure.
I went to a couple Guar shows that were really transformative for me.
What's weird is I feel like Cake is kind of like that too, but they're not vulgar. But I think about Cake sometimes, and I'm like, such a weird band in some ways. Like the humor elements.
You could compare Cake to King Missile. I don't know if you ever.
No, I don't know.
Did you ever listen to? So in the '90s, there was a whole. I don't know. There was a whole treasure trove of novelty joke bands.
So Detachable Penis. Yeah.
Yeah, Detachable Penis, right.
That's a great song.
Yeah. So I remember growing up in middle school listening to college radio. There's a Drexel had a college radio station, Widener and Swarthmore radio station. And it was so much of it was alternative. This would be like pre-grunge alternative joke music or something, it would be Guar, King Missile. Every band had sort of a jokey talking, spoken word kind of song. The Dead Milkmen had those. And those really, as a kid, captured my imagination, just imagining funny shit that was, especially when as a kid, like really lowbrow kind of ideas. And the fact that it was on the radio, I think just stuck with me. Even more serious punk bands like Dead Kennedys and stuff, they all had at least a couple of these jokey songs,
Yeah. I mean, that's truly radical. I actually think humor and art basically immediately removes you from any serious academic or institutional consideration. So it's always struck me as amazing. Like no comedy film was ever going to win an award. Doesn't matter how funny it is. And
I think I always hung out in that space. Like that felt comfortable to me. I never wanted to be too serious. I always wanted to hide my serious ideas in humor, and in really, really hide it in the dumbest humor I could think of, somewhere in there was actually real feelings and emotions, but I had to code it with lowbrow sort of humor stuff.
Well, you have a brother, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
I think that goes. I have four older brothers, and I feel like it's kind of just like an inside joke generating machine in which you share, like you build memories and connection via that kind of ridiculousness, not like overt emotional displays, you know?
Yeah, to me, growing up was, I mean, maybe this was a lot of people that came up in the 90s and stuff, that irony poisoning. Like, I was completely irony poisoned for most of the 90s. And it wasn't until, I would say, when was that? Somewhere around 2000, maybe 2005 or 2006, I started noticing that people were not into irony as much. And I had to like sort of curb a bit of my humor and stuff
Hmm.
to not come off as like um, a downer, basically. Because to me, by that point, by the time around the time of like E-Bombs World and all that kind of stuff, um, like where internet joke, dark internet, early internet meme videos were happening and stuff. Like the first time you ever saw those like GI Joe PSA
Mm-hmm,
commercials,
mm-hmm.
like that kind of stuff. At the same time, I don't know, something happened, something changed in the world. I guess people just got sick of irony. Um, and socially, I just had to sort of alter in order to keep getting along with people. I just had to be like, oh, I can't always be like making dark jokes all the time, like and also like hating everything. You
Sure,
know?
sure, sure.
So I remember having to like really self-assess and be like, okay, not everything sucks. I can't just be like everything sucks all the time. And also I have to like try to like interact with people on a genuine level at some point, and not just connect, not only just connect through humor and irony and stuff, you know, which I think for most of the 90s, I maybe I'm overgeneralizing, because there was like really passionate amongst my friends. We had this like passionate desire to like understand the, you know, what we were doing on the earth and all this kind of stuff. So it's not clear exactly, but I know that irony and my sense of humor, dark humor, and also like lowbrow potty humor and all that kind of stuff. I don't know that all
I
that.
think I think the high and the low come together often. You know, it reminds me of there's this Jodorowsky book. He's like pretty prone to this, I feel like, but it's
Yeah,
you know, his character keeps getting diarrhea and it's
yeah,
just like it's just ridiculous. Basically
yeah.
slapstick.
Jodorowsky was such a big influence on me. Like watching Holy Mountain. I remember there's a scene in Holy Mountain that really affected me. Was they were at this there's this art gallery scene where it's human bodies mixed with like abstract sculpture and stuff, and the
Yeah.
people who are going, the art collectors who are there like checking out the gallery, are like sticking their fingers in people's butts and stuff, you know.
Yeah, is
And
that
it,
right around that scene with like the machine that's getting fucked?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
kind of fun. And I just remember seeing that and being like, this is this movie blew me. The Holy Mountain just blew me away. You know, I remember thinking this was one of the most, just one of the deepest and most drop me on my ass, visually and conceptually, you know, films I'd ever seen. But also, it was not afraid to be stupid.
No.
And I just remember thinking to myself, this is my zone. Like, this is the zone I want to hang out. I don't mind. I really love stupid shit. And I also am on my own, like, personal, really serious, um, journey in my life to like figure. I don't know what I'm trying to. I'm trying to figure something out that's reflected in my stories and stuff. So it's all there. But
Do you
yeah,
find that you've like always been in that zone and you want to be in that zone till you die? That this is a consistent thread?
yeah, I've been in that zone since I was like a middle school kid, like, or even an elementary school kid. I've always been grappling with death and with reality. Like, what are we doing here? Kind of those big, broad questions have driven me crazy for my whole life. You know, and even when I was a kid, I remember being tricked into going to. I got tricked into one summer. My neighbor tricked me into going to. Do you know what Young Life is?
No, no.
Young Life is like after school Christian after school get together social stuff thing.
Right.
You would get together and with these counselors and you would sing songs and then go get chicken nuggets at McDonald's afterwards.
Sick.
And my neighbor convinced me to go because all the popular kids were going. I was trying to like find a girlfriend or whatever. And so I remember my neighbor Steve was like, "Oh yeah, all the popular girls are at this thing, Young Life." So I agreed to go, and then I kept going every week, thinking it was getting me in with the popular kids. And then they told us there was a weekend retreat, and everyone was going. So we went to camp to go climb the ropes course and play capture the flag and stuff. So I went, and then after capture the flag, the counselor gathered us all together and gave this big speech about how if we didn't accept Jesus into our lives, we were going to hell. And you had to actually right there and say, "I accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior," kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being so mad. I got so angry, and I was probably like, 14 or something. One, that I had been tricked into going to this thing. I didn't realize it was a religious thing. And two, they were telling me if I didn't accept this specific person from history as my Lord and Savior, I was going to hell. And I just flipped out. I remember talking to my counselor, like we all got together in small groups. I was just like, this is bullshit. What about the whole rest of the world throughout history who didn't know who Jesus was? Like, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
That like they all just went to hell. Is that what you're saying? I was like losing my mind. And I remember this counselor was so concerned. He really wanted to sort this out with me. And then I remember seeing the rest of the cabin was all the popular dudes. And they were like, "I'm going to go make out with Michelle behind the, behind the cabin."
For sure. Yeah.
Like no one else cared except for me and my super Christian neighbor, Steve, who had tricked me into going to this thing.
He coerced you.
Yeah.
I think that's true. I talked to my other friend about, like, I just don't, and I'm not judging it, but I don't think the majority of humans are concerned with that problem, which sounds kind of good and nice.
I always wonder about that. Yeah. I
mean, based on my experience in life, like I relate to you in saying, I remember being like 5 or 6 and being horrified of infinity.
Yeah.
And the problem with that was when I was told I was going to heaven, it still meant I was in infinity,
Right.
So I felt really trapped, I guess, because the good solution didn't. Of course, I didn't understand that it's a place outside of time, and I would have no sense of time, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've definitely. I don't try to convince people to care about these things. I've met people who don't think there's any repercussion to whether God exists or doesn't, which I think is interesting. Just not a concern.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, like you said, maybe just you and your neighbor care and everyone else is just trying to finger each other, basically.
Right. Yeah. I think there are enough people that care that there's enough stories in the world about this kind of stuff, so there is a segment of the population throughout history who have definitely cared about this problem or whatever, or thinking about this kind of thing. But I think I've run into a lot of people that just, I don't know, it doesn't bother them, or they just, maybe they just process life and death in they accept the deal. Your parents die,
Yeah.
you feel bad, you mourn their loss, and then at some point it's your turn, and your children, hopefully you have children, and they mourn your loss, and that's, maybe you maybe you maybe you wrote some cool books or something. I don't know.
No, that doesn't sound so bad.
Yeah.
I think part of that question I asked before is one of the concerns I often have is symbol manipulation without understanding the depth of the symbol.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of ways, like, we just have all these cool looking symbols,
Right.
stripped from their context. And at a certain point, I became very concerned with that I was just kind of like drawing upon stuff I couldn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So my question about outside of the therapist is, do you have a spiritual practice that lets you use this exploration in a way that could heal? Or is it largely like an aesthetic and historical exploration?
So how it started was, how did this start? So right. Like I said, I grew up in like a fundamentalist Christian household that was obsessed with the devil and stuff. And then as I grew older, as I got older, actually I met a friend group that were all atheists in high school. And they were atheists, and they were also into like conspiracy theories and stuff like that. So they were into like New World Order stuff, and like religion being controlling, sort of like manipulation of people, mm-hmm. and that kind of stuff. And I remember, and like we all read Robert Anton Wilson and stuff, the like Illuminati trilogy and stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember that point of view like blowing my mind. Like it was so shocking and seemed so evil to me. Like my friends just saying God didn't exist and stuff. Cause I was like pretty Christian still by the time I was, what do you call it? Ninth grade, I guess. Or I had some sort of like God, like, at least I didn't belong to any church, but I just had this like foundation of believing in God. And then these guys were, they were not, I don't know, they weren't into it, but but they still had this intuitive magical thinking, I guess you could say. So a lot of my first interest into like figuring things out myself and going on my own journey to just explore intuitively like what my interests were in the spiritual, as far as like outside of material reality. What's it all about? It can't just be about my Christian upbringing. So I just started, and I knew that in my mind, I knew that like the atheist mode of thinking was, to me, was wrong. It just, I just could never make peace with that. It's like one of those things where something just seems so obvious to me that I can't, like, a person could just sit there, Richard Dawkins could just sit there and talk to me about atheism for like a week straight, and I still would be like, you're just wrong. Like, you just, not that I don't know if there's a God or whatever, but just even just based on certain art and music I've listened to in my life, I'm just like, this has something to do with, this has something, there's a connection here, I think, through art that is like one of the main ways of connecting to the divine, And I think there have been some musicians in history who have done it, who've like made that connection. You can just put on their records and be like, that's it. That's this person is speaking with God or whatever,
Yeah.
or whatever you want to call it. And I just sense that in my experience of listening to that music. I'm like, I don't know, that it's so anecdotal, but to me, it's really real. So I just never want to, it's like people who've had out of body experiences or like near death experiences, and then later like create a logical way to explain away, something that they firsthand experience. And I'm super into the like lived anecdotal experience of seeing ghosts and that kind of thing. And I don't know. So from that point so I'm giving you super long-winded.
Okay.
So from that point in my life, I just kept my radar open to any sort of new information I could collect. And especially after being a post college dropout, I just started getting into magic and the like occult revival stuff and Manly P. Hall and stuff. So I read Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages. That was the big book for me that kind of opened the floodgates. But I had been listening to a lot of like conspiracy radio stuff, like Coast to Coast. I don't know if you ever listened to Coast to Coast, but
No, I don't think I know that.
it would come on at like 2 a.m. in the morning on AM radio, and it's this guy George Norrie, and before him was Art Bell were the hosts, and it was just a freeform radio show of anybody. Well, I think it was on Friday nights. Anybody could call in from around the country, and it was usually crazy truckers and stuff, just calling in about Bigfoot or whatever.
Yeah.
And I would listen every night almost, and just completely, I don't know, rewiring my brain into this paranoid magical thinking kind of. And so that combined with so early on around 2000, probably 2007, 2005, I was totally conspiracy brained, totally like getting into reading occult books and anything about alternative ideas about history and stuff, and like the hollow earth and reptilians and all that kind of stuff. And reading Morning of the Magicians, that like old occult revivalist hippie book. And I just kind of wanted to absorb anything that was on the fringes. And I think partially because I felt like the answers that were being presented to me through traditional sources like history books and media, news media and stuff, to me was so dead. It was so there was no life in it, and there was no joy in it. It just felt like dead. I was receiving messages from a dead world, and I wanted to feel like optimistic, I guess.
Sure.
About why we were here. I didn't want the like museum explanation about the Dogon tribe. I wanted the like crazy alternative history guy saying that the Dogon tribe were communicating with aliens, and that's why they knew that the Sirius system was a binary star system, without telescopes or whatever.
It seems like a seeking of vitality, craving of vitality, which I don't know if you would agree, but if we're using this framework, I think the world is dying or has been dying since the time you mentioned far more. I find it even more kind of controlled and stifled in respect to mysteries, etc. I think
Yeah, vitality. You just hit the word that like vitality is the word. Like, yeah,
for me, it's the word, and it's like if I have a philosophy of anything or a politics of anything, it's the preservation of vitality, which is almost amoral in some sense. It's
right.
kind of tricky, but I mean, I think I see it in the comics you make. There's a speed, there's just a potency.
Yeah,
It doesn't surprise me that you're attracted to jujitsu
yeah,
because there's kind of that. I mean, interestingly enough, I think these, for me at least, bring up questions of what it means to be a man specifically,
yeah.
and one's relationship to that energy.
Yeah. So the reason I reacted to the word vitality so much just now is because actually it's been coming up in my therapy sessions a lot. Is that word,
Mhm.
and and yeah, exactly. Like all my comics since around the time I started this web comics called Forming. My comics have all been, I would say, the underlying um, um, motivation behind them is you could say vitality, like capturing vitality or channeling the like creative whatever it is that like it exploded the the universe into existence. I'm trying to ride that wave still, whatever that original creative impulse. And I associate that with the feeling of vitality, and also as like someone who grew up as a male, like there is like a heavy emphasis on masculinity in my work. I think even like unconsciously, it just comes out that way. Even though, like for example, in my comics, there's a lot of sort of gender swapping stuff.
Yep.
But I think that even all the like super gender swapped configurations I have in my comics characters who are super gender swapped and stuff, they're all kind of like, maybe this is the limitation of my perspective or something. It's like they all kind of act like archetypal toxic men kind of stuff, you know?
You're like heroes.
Yeah. So I don't know what that's all about, but I think I can't, at some point I can't help it. I'm just trying to go hard all the time. And that's just what comes out. And I think I don't know, that's my flavor, I guess. And other people have other flavors. But that's the way I feel alive when I'm creating, is kind of through that motivational fuel. Is that,
What about when you're not creating? Does that carry over?
um, I don't know. I've had people give me mixed messages on how I am in my life. Like I don't really understand myself. Like I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know who I am. Like I've been trying to sort this out for years and years. Like I think my friends, for a long time, there was this running joke that I was a robot, So I used to characterize myself that way, as like robotic and not being very emotional or connected to my own emotions. And then I've had other people tell me they perceive me as being extremely emotional, and like reactionary and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've had other people tell me that I'm really feminine and very like soft. So I don't know. I have no idea, honestly. It's like I've never gotten a straight answer, and I don't even think I can really. I get so many mixed signals from different friends. I don't know.
Do you feel that you have an axis, like some kind of central point that you can reference? That being said,
like in what way?
well, it sounds like really difficult to feel grounded if you have this kind of splintering view, but
Yeah.
is the work the central axis? I mean, it's part of why I asked the questions about the symbol
Yeah.
and religious exploration, because religion often is just the grounding force for, I think,
Yeah.
civilization, but people.
Yeah.
And sometimes, again, like it can be purely an aesthetic interest or even novelty interest, or I definitely had my phases of just going all over the place and looking for it. For me right now, I'm just rooted pretty heavy in Christianity again after
Yeah.
leaving. And I don't know if that's just like a pragmatic decision
Yeah.
to kind of deal with, because like one system is way complex enough and beyond one lifetime of interpretation.
For sure.
But that's why I'm interested is like, I could understand if like jujitsu or something is grounding, but if you're being given all these different kind of perspectives of even who you are as an individual,
Yeah.
I'm curious. Obviously, the work, you make a lot of work, so it probably is very grounding as well.
I would say like I'm not grounded. I have no solid understanding of myself. It's always in question and giving me high anxiety, pretty much all the time. And I can't. I have a hard time like having answers to anything. That's why a lot of times people ask me like my opinions on things, and I'll just not. I'll run through like my brain will just go into a jumble. I just won't on any sort of big existential question. I just don't have any sort of answers or anything. So I do lean a lot on external like stuff I've read or getting caught up in the math basically of spiritual systems and getting distracted by that stuff or getting like obsessed with some whatever at one point I was reading the Gnostic Bible and stuff like that, just getting into those sorts of cosmologies and systems and stuff just in order for someone else who's more confident than me like explaining to me what their system is and what grounds them, and then I will be distracted by that for a long enough time. But nothing within me internally ever really seems to ground me that much, except that when I'm in a creative flow state, right? And that's sort of a me in my own way, like speaking to God or whatever. And actually, to speak on your Christian thing, what I found, this is a curious thing. I haven't like made any sort of decision about it or anything like that, but I have found that at times in my life when I've been having deepest anxiety, or on the verge of panic attacks and stuff like that, actually praying to the Christian God has given me the most relief. For whatever reason. I don't know why. So I actually made note of that a couple of years ago. And I check in with the Christian God here and there. Just to
you've got a kind of a medicine cabinet of gods in a sense?
Yeah, you could say.
Do you fear any of them?
No.
No? Man,
no.
I'm like afraid of magic with a K.
Oh, I'm afraid. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I'm afraid of. I'm definitely like afraid of demons.
Do you think it's clear when you're interacting with a demon and when you aren't?
No, I read. Have you read about John Dee? John Dee's like. Have you read his biography? Do you know about him?
I've heard of him, but no.
So I read I have his memoirs, like all of his like transcribed interactions with angels, or possibly demons. And I think what the conclusion I came to is that there might not be a difference, and it just might be like forces that are just operating on energy alone and don't have the same sort of morality as human beings, and they you shouldn't fuck with them. Yeah.
Oh, you're saying don't fuck with the angels or demons.
Yeah, because you don't know if it's an angel or demon. And I really don't know if I even understand if there's a difference between the two.
Well, yeah, that's kind of where I land. And I think I used to have a perspective on the muse as a kind of catch-all phrase, but
Yeah.
I became a lot more fearful in some ways of like what I was playing with, even in said flow state.
Yeah.
Because I think the flow state is a byproduct of a certain, I don't know how to word this. Like you could probably achieve it via many avenues,
Yeah.
but I don't necessarily conflate it with worship. Like I used to in some ways, like kind of like making the argument, well, meditating, like obviously there's meditation and then there's drawing, and drawing and meditation aren't the same thing, but they might feel similar, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. It's almost like a cheat code for like if you can put everything you want into art as this like giant encapsulation of everything you need, then you can spend 10 hours a day making it without worrying about like, oh, actually, do I need to be in silence with said whatever God for 1 hour a day? And then only I get 9 hours to draw. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But I think, yeah, to me, well, whatever, I don't know, like, I don't have a set belief system except that I believe that we're experiencing, we're either, well, whether we like it or not, we're experiencing God at all times. So it's either you're like open to it or you're in denial of it. So, to me, the act of drawing and making up stories and even interacting with people is a religious practice or a spiritual practice.
Okay.
And so I don't have to spend time like, whatever, praying to Mecca or, to be observing my whatever God or whatever. I think
Gotcha.
yeah, it's happening all the time, and sometimes I'm tuned in, sometimes I'm not tuned in, sometimes I'm just dealing with money, all that kind of stuff.
So in respect to, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious in respect to ground the conversation more, in respect to like a normal day and how many hours you tend to be able to get in that flow state. What is that? Are you hyper structured? Or are you kind of chaotic?
I'm kind of like, I try to model myself after, I call it like the Miyazaki method or something. I kind of don't, I have a slow morning. I get started around 10. And my morning is just me puttering around, drinking coffee, doing stretches. And, the stretching is a recent thing.
I was going to say, that sounds like good advice.
Yeah, it's really recent, like only within the past 2 weeks. But I've been doing it every day. But I have the Miyazaki thing is like, to me, he's one of the most, he's pumped out some banger after banger, and he doesn't get started working until 11. So I remember seeing that in the documentary about him and just being like, that's it. That's what's up, So you have a slow morning, and then at some point you decide, okay, now it's time to sit down and do some stuff, make some stuff, and then you just go until the wheels fall off, basically.
So you have this luxury in some sense of just ripping through the day.
Yeah.
You don't have to like jump in a bunch of meetings or something. You're just going from 11 on until you burn out.
No, meetings happen a lot. I have a lot of Zoom meetings.
That doesn't kill your flow?
It can, but sometimes it's a relief. Sometimes it's like it'll pull me away from, because I find that making stuff, drawing and coming up with stories is taxing. So I do take breaks. I'll go get a cookie or whatever, go for a little walk, that kind of thing.
Nice.
Just to break it up. Go get coffee somewhere. I do pound energy drinks. So that's a little, whatever.
Which one?
I try them all.
Wow. See, that's interesting.
Right now,
I see what's going on here.
yeah, right now I've got like a 12 pack of Ghost in my fridge.
I don't even know what that is.
Someone just recommended it to me. Someone sent me a picture of Ghost, and I ordered
Yeah.
some online. I was like, I'll try Ghost.
It reminds me of Balls. I don't know if you remember Balls. It was like it was an energy drink called Balls that like cyber cafes would have when that was a thing.
Yeah, I remember I went on because I've got a Walgreens down the street where they have Monsters and stuff. And I remember getting like a 6-pack of Monsters and walking back to my house, and someone on the street, some like hipster person, recognized me. You know, they were like, well, first they made fun of me for carrying a 6-pack of Monsters. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they were like, "Oh, nice." I forget what they say, like going for your drug run or something like that. And then they were like, "Aren't you Jesse Moynihan?" You know, so I was like doubly embarrassed that I was like drinking my extreme, going for my extreme fuel, whatever, the stuff that keeps me going at around 3 o'clock.
Yeah, they demystified your source of energy.
yeah, it's not all from the highest source. Yeah.
So that's like a day, huh? That's you don't have like how often do you do jujitsu?
I've been trying to go to jujitsu like 3 or 4 days a week. Yeah, I usually go I go to the late class, so I go at like 8 at night. So I'll usually be done. So Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then sometimes Saturday. Yeah, I go at night at like 8 o'clock. I come home, make some dinner, and then usually just I'm done by then. So I'll work from between 10 and 7:30, something like that.
Gotcha.
Pretty much every day. I don't think I really take any days off. At least for the past 4 years.
In respect to making art?
Yeah, in respect to doing something creative. Yeah.
You couldn't possibly be in a relationship, right?
So my girlfriend and I broke up. When was that? About 5 months ago. We were together for about 7 years.
Can you manage to do that in a relationship?
So she was also a workaholic.
Okay.
So it was kind of working out and also not working out at the same time. And I don't know, actually don't have a solution for this. And this is something I've really been trying to sort out in therapy and stuff. Right now, I'm sort of thinking that it's just not going to work out for me in that department. Like, I don't think I have, unless I get really like, okay, if I get a debilitating illness, like if I get Lou Gehrig's disease or something, then I could chill and be in if someone wanted to be in a relationship with me, it probably would work out.
Sure, like it's like Phantom Thread.
Yeah, my friend Alex told me to watch Phantom Thread the other day. I still haven't seen it, and then he described the plot to me, and then I thought to myself, that probably applies to my life. I would relate to this. So
no, you should definitely check that out.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't want that to be the answer, but I feel like I'm zeroing in on this answer because it's been a running problem in all my relationships. Me prioritizing the creative,
of course,
pursuit, and I don't know how other people, because I've dated all types, people who aren't into that, people who are probably equally as much into that as I am, and because you're attracted to other people who have similar interests, right? Usually. And so you meet other people who have that same like unquenchable desire to do something big, I guess. And then maybe that just means like you can't, I don't know. Yeah, the parts of the relationship that need to be nourished get wilt away, kind of after about 2 years.
Sure, yeah, it's a very difficult problem, and
Yeah, I don't know the
and
solution.
I don't know if there is one in
Yeah,
particular. I think in modernity we're really not comfortable with sacrificing one thing for the other often, and
yeah,
this just might be one of those scenarios where it's tough to have both things happen at once.
yeah. I think I thought about trying to date someone who just like did a 9 to 5 job and didn't have any hobbies or anything after, beyond that, beyond
Sure,
like
sure.
their super stable living that they make, and then they could be the grounded person in my life while I'm like all over the place, whatever. And they book all the vacations and stuff, and I, and I don't have the bandwidth to like buy plane tickets to Hawaii or whatever.
Yeah. That sounds like it could work.
Yeah,
But it's this weird thing where art becomes the peacock feather and also the thing that ends the relationship often. It's
yeah,
like it makes you resent making art sometimes.
yeah.
It's very tricky.
I really, really, I mean, not to get too much into this, but the past 7 years, I really, really tried to find that balance, like find the thing where I could do both things at once and really put all my effort into everything, and it just didn't. It just wasn't realistic, and I wasn't willing to. Yeah, I wasn't really willing to be that much different, I guess. Um,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
and you grow up with this idea that I don't know what you observed as a child, like growing up with seeing people who maybe your friends' parents or something, and people who had given up on their creative pursuits in order to raise a family and all that kind of stuff. But I kind of clocked that a lot when I was growing up, and that gave me this thing. That gave me this impression that I was supposed to do the opposite, and that I wouldn't make the same mistake as all my friends' parents, who had maybe been musicians or whatever, like painters or whatever, and then gave everything to having a good family, basically.
Yeah,
And,
you know what I do?
yeah,
Because I'm like very concerned about this idea.
yeah,
Whenever I feel that way, I look up like Mobius has 4 kids. And I'm not saying this is like an objective measurement of being a good father or something.
yeah,
But I'll be like, or Gene Wolfe had a bunch of kids.
yeah,
I'll just look up artists that I think are immense and just like, I'm not even to talk about Miyazaki and his 2 kids because I'm
yeah,
not sure he's like present at all.
yeah,
But I'll be like, oh, like, wow, like, I don't know how, but people do it.
yeah.
And also like there's artists who's just like they went to war and then they
Right.
fuck
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean? Like I think we often we try to live faster in some ways than we should,
Yeah.
but that always gives me comfort when I'm like, oh, okay, this person had like 5 kids and somehow did crazy work and
Right.
figured it out.
I think a lot of times, okay, maybe sometimes it's the other partner is really, really pulling the weight.
In like the actual world, you mean?
Yeah,
Like
raising the kids and being nurturing and all that kind of stuff, and paying attention and going to the soccer games and all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of times these creative monsters who have families and kids and stuff, I think they're pretty. My impression is that a lot of times they're pretty absent. And so it's either, I think, regardless, your kids will survive. They'll probably be okay that the dad was a little distant or whatever, But
yeah, it's like, do you want a cool dad or not?
yeah. But I have a fear. I have such a deep, deep fear of traumatizing my kids that it's prevented me from ever like committing to that idea. I have dreams about like my kids and all this kind of stuff, and raising them wrong and all this kind of stuff, or them resenting me when they're in their 20s and having to sit me down and tell me what a shitty dad I was. And you know, so I don't know. There's a lot of deep anxiety I have about doing it wrong, I guess. And I think maybe that's a big modern anxiety for a lot of people, is that prevents people from having kids and just pursuing their careers, is this idea of doing it wrong.
I think it's something. I have a stepdaughter. I think it's a lack of understanding of like the poetry of life and also the uncontrollable natures of life.
Yeah.
It's like a God complex. Like people think they can have one kid and make him a genius. That's not how geniuses work.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure. Yeah.
The world makes 1 million people and one turns out to be one, you know, just the way it works.
It's a very, I don't know. Yeah. I when I think about that stuff and then I get to the point where I'm like, oh yeah, no one ever gets it right. You shouldn't have the expectation that you would. You should just do it.
Yeah. You can get it. You can get it right, and your kid can hate you for their whole life. It's just like it's so beautiful in that way that I guess what I like about it is it's so anti-consumerist in a sense, because you can't like return the kid or you can't, you know what I mean? Like there's no other thing that's equal where like, oh yeah, I have this thing for the rest of my life now. Yeah. It's so crazy. You know, I don't know if you feel that way about forming. How long you think you'll be doing forming? You think you're just going to do it till the end?
No, I'm trying to finish it in the next year.
Oh, it has an end?
Yeah. I've got like 26 more pages to go.
Oh, damn. I didn't know if it was like a Berserk type thing where it's just like, this is the...
No, I was supposed to be done years ago, but I got caught up in the animation biz so much that I didn't have time to work on it. And so the past couple months, I finally had some time to get back into it and work on it again. I finished like storyboarding the ending, and I just have to draw it. I just have to paint it now. So,
oh wow! So you know the ending?
Yeah, basically, like unless I decide once I get to the ending that it was a bad idea and I needed to rewrite it, but I think I have it.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'm not going to think about it too hard because the whole process has been me winging it the whole time anyway. So it's worked, and it's according to some people, it's worked out. So I'm just going to trust that I can keep doing that until it's over. But I don't want it to go my whole life. Yeah, I want to do something else. I want to finish the story. Like I don't want to die in the middle, like Berserk style, like you said. I don't want to die before finishing it. Yeah, I remember actually my only interaction I ever had with. Do you know the comic artist Charles Burns?
Yeah.
I used to make fun of how slow he was when he was doing. What do you call it? Black Hole. And I was like, oh, I would never be like Charles Burns. And then, you know, in the end, it turns out I'm worse than Charles Burns.
You mean in respect to the output?
Yeah, in respect to the speed. Yeah.
I have like a dual, like I respect both modalities, like Jack Kirby just pumping. And then like CF, where I'm like, I don't even know if Power Masters is still coming out.
Right.
And I think they're very different. They're going for different things, you know? And so you can't expect the same kind of result. But on the other hand, I look at Miyazaki, who I think about a lot, and I'm just like, in my opinion, he's basically done everything that needs to be done. And I mean that within the context of what he makes. Like, he can do the human, the poetic, the abstract, the fantasy for adults, for kids. He's just everything. And he shows up to work like a monster and gets it done. And like has managed to, you know, I know there's other people involved with the studio, but like, you know, he's had employees for decades, and it sounds like he explodes at times, but like he has the humanity to bring it back. And I don't know, to me, that's like a huge role model of, I don't know, I just think he has a lot of humanity, which is beautiful.
Yeah, sometimes I think about him and it actually makes me kind of upset
to not be him, because I've thought about this. I don't want to be him,
I don't want
but
to be him, but part of me wants to be as good as him.
sure, of course.
And then I think about what he's accomplished, and I just get pissed off. Just his Nausicaa graphic novel.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I'm just I yeah, just that so early. I don't know how old he was when he drew Nausicaa, but I'm like just reading that. I'm like motherfucker, like you know?
He's not that old, yeah.
Yeah. So
And
yeah,
he's doing that on the side while working in an animation studio.
yeah.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
But
I just have to put it out of mind and just be like, don't compare, no comparing and despairing, just
I've never heard that.
I've got my own life path. It might not be, it's going to be more niche, and, or whatever. But to me, like Nausicaa is that thing. It's like the most niche. It is super niche. Especially the manga is like, that manga to me is like contains everything I ever thought about what it means to be alive and what it means to have compassion and all that kind of stuff, and I'm just like, he fucking, it's all in this thing, like why even bother doing my thing? But I just have to kind of put it out of my mind and just keep following my own personal muse and just don't
you gotta like watch the end of Howl's Moving Castle and just be like, it's not a very good ending.
he has problems with third acts,
but it's part of the magic of how his process, and I think it just hits or it doesn't, and like he just moves on and he's a human.
That's what I actually don't know the mythology surrounding his process and like how it was represented in that documentary. When he was making The Wind Rises or whatever, and he was storyboarding it all just straight through.
Yeah.
And then he goes, I think I figured it out. And everyone claps or whatever. And no one like pins it up on the wall and dissects it and goes, maybe this third act could be stronger,
Yeah.
He's just
it's
like, nah,
great.
it's done. It's done. I remember watching that and being like, hell yeah, like that's exactly like how all things should be made this way. Never like, just don't question the auteur, just let them make the thing. If it's like sloppy or whatever, that's fine. It doesn't have to be, not everything needs to be Toy Story tight or whatever.
Toy Story tight is an interesting phrase.
Yeah. Pixar figured out this like this math equation to their stories to make them all work.
I was watching that Charlie podcast, and at the end you were talking about some kind of studio structure, right? Like you would be interested in something bigger.
Yeah.
Or that, can you talk about that a little bit?
Like my fantasies of like an auteur studio kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's based around a couple of conversations I'd had with other story people over the years. Like there's a couple of guys, Nick Edwards and Tom Herpick, who was Tom I worked with on Adventure Time, and he's one of my best buds out here in LA, and Nick I've become close with, and we've just kind of, since working in the animation industry, you go through these phases where I think this is a pretty common problem of like having access to big money people who they let you take meetings with them, and then you pitch them your crazy idea, and then they tell you that they're huge fans, and then the thing you want to make never gets made, basically. And that's an ongoing thing, like this endless dangling carrot. And you can't get bummed out about it, because then you'll get crushed and you'll just move to Boise or something and give up. So you just keep doing it. You keep chasing the dangling carrot. And so that's an easy thing to talk about with people in the similar situation. So we just get lunch or coffee or whatever, and we complain about like some movie we were developing for 3 years that got canceled or whatever.
Yeah.
And so early on, we used to get together at drinking draws, and we would talk about what it would take to make what's the lowest budget you could make an independent movie for? At sort of like it wouldn't look as good as a Ghibli film or whatever, but if you had great ideas, maybe people would still like it, kind of, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I think we hit around. I think you could do it for 2.5 million at the very, very lowest. Make a feature film. So we always talked about that, and so I've over the past couple of years, I've just been like slowly making connections, slowly trying to meet up with investor people and stuff like that, and like get in those rooms with people who are more like spending money is more fun for them.
Sure.
Rather than being your job being on the line at Warner Brothers or something. If you greenlight a wacky feature film idea, you know?
Yeah.
So it's based around those conversations, and I've been slowly working on ways of raising those kinds of funds. I haven't done it yet, but I've been able to like raise funds to make short films and stuff like that. So I'm starting to like really figure out how to be a savvy business person and not just an artist, I guess.
And you feel competent? Like you feel you can execute all that?
I have no idea. I'm just like trying basically, because to me, I've gotten to the point in my life where I get this reaction, like allergic reaction to working on something I don't think is good.
Oh yeah, I don't understand how people can do that with animation. That would eat my soul.
Yeah, I've had to bite the bullet a couple times in the past couple of years, and I've just like been, you know, living in LA is expensive. So
sure.
There were a point in time where my bank account, I was going to be out of money in about 2 months, and a job offer came up, and I was like, I have to, no matter how bad this is, I just have to say yes. And you just do it, and you.
Sure, yeah, it's work.
You do it, and you're thankful for the work and thankful for the paycheck, you know. But when I'm doing okay, if I have enough money in the bank, I always say no.
That's smart.
To shit that I think sucks.
Yeah, when I was young and interested in being an animator, I had a friend who worked for Blue Sky, and he worked on robots, and I don't remember how long he worked on it, but I remember him showing me the scene when I was like a teenager, and he animated like a guy in the background in one scene that was like 3 seconds, and it took him, I don't know, months. And I was like, wow, this movie sucks. Two, like if you have a kind of like, there's definitely artists I know who should just work in the animation industry because they don't really have their own vision, and they're great at facilitating or just working or just like fleshing out a world. But I definitely lament people I know who I think have that vision, who get kind of stuck, whether it be in the comfort or the, you know, the immense work that is that industry.
Yeah, I think some people, it depends on how your brain works. I think some people have like micro interests. They're just interested. So if they're an animator or something, they're just interested in movement, you know, of capturing movement or something, or a performance in a scene. Right. And to them, it's really not about, the overall concept of the film or how great it's written or whatever. It's more like just the joy of that micro experience of making something look cool, you know,
it's in true.
That moment. And I'm sort of a macro artist, I guess. To me, it's like the broad idea has to be good. It has to have the right intentions behind it, and the right, I don't know, creative like team and all that kind of stuff for me to feel good about working for someone else. So I don't know if I've just gotten to a point in my life where if I'm working for someone else and they've got garbage ideas and they're coming from the wrong creative place, I can't say yes. Like I just can't. Unless I'm really strapped, unless I'm in trouble, trouble, then I'll do anything. Like I just, you know, that just becomes a pragmatic thing. But if I have a choice between working on my own thing that makes me zero money, or working on someone else's thing that I think is a dumb idea, I'm just going to do my own thing and just watch my bank account
Dwindle.
until I need to take. Hopefully, I get an offer from someone who I like, and then I'll do some visual development for them or something like that, or do some storyboards for them or something. But yeah, that's sort of been my life for the past, basically since Midnight. I worked on Midnight Gospel. That was probably like 5 years ago. Ever since then, I've just been trying to only do my own thing as much as possible.
Was that as close to doing your own thing while getting paid decent, Midnight Gospel?
I would say like visually, yeah, like none of the concepts were my concept.
Sure.
It was all Duncan and Penn. Mm-hmm. But as far as them telling me like just go off and do it, like make this look however you want, I was like, okay. And so that was an amazing freedom where I was experimenting, because I'd never art directed anything before either. So I really didn't know what I was doing. All I had was like intuition and the way I kind of did things in my comics. And I learned Photoshop on that job.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Ellie Machado. Did you say you knew Ellie? Yeah.
I showed her work at the gallery and I did an interview with her.
So basically Ellie was brought on as a visual development phase. And then she became the lead background designer. And she basically taught me Photoshop on the job. Because
forming is all just original pages, right?
Yeah, it was all original pages. And when I first got hired on Midnight Gospel, I wanted to do everything on paper. I was like, can we just paint all the backgrounds on paper, have everything be like cut out, scanned in assets? And they told me no. They said,
yeah, that's a tough sell.
Yeah, the studio had one scanner that was in a closet and one copy machine that was no one used and one light table that I used. So yeah, I had to learn really fast how to like adapt my art style to digital, basically.
How would you describe the difference between working digitally versus analog?
I would say working analog is more physical. It's sort of like more similar to working in a garden or something. And then working digitally is more like it's like cleaner in some ways, easier. And then also in some ways you get more in the weeds digitally.
Sure. Yeah.
And you become really detail focused digitally. Like my analog art is way more crude, more like primitive looking or whatever.
Yeah, it can feed the neuroses of just like making everything perfect all the time.
Yeah, my digital work is like way more rendered. I like super rendered. I started to really like I work on the computer all the time now. I use Photoshop. I would say in animation I'm using Photoshop more than I'm using my paints.
How do you feel about that? Like even spiritually speaking, does that feel off to you or does that feel comfortable?
I think I've sort of accepted it, but I also, and I think that sometimes my digital work looks better than my analog work. But when I went back so I took a long break. I took about a year off from making comics. And then when I went back to my just straight analog comics making, it was my muscle had definitely atrophied, and it took me a couple weeks before I started really enjoying working on paper again. It was like wading through a swamp for a couple weeks. And
Yeah.
now that I'm back into it, I really am enjoying it again, and it's easy. And what's great about it is, and this is something I took into my digital work at first, like especially on Midnight Gospel, was this idea of making really decisive choices when you're painting on paper. You have to make you basically have sort of like one or two shots at getting things right, and you have to decide. You have to make these decisions where you're like, this is the color I'm going to use, this is the color I'm going to mix, this is the way I'm going to find light and shadow. And if I mess this up, it's going to be a real pain in the ass to fix it. So you accept, sometimes you accept unwanted, like some mistakes and stuff, and you get into this process that's really almost like a game, and or yeah, like you're on a game show or something, or like you've got I don't know, you've got a couple of chances, and then you just have to keep moving on if you mess it up, basically. Or if you're really crazy, you just start over, you just rip it up and start from scratch again. But I've only done that a few times in my life where I messed up an illustration or a page so bad I had to just completely start over.
Yeah. No, I often consider the psychological repercussions of those two ways of working, because I think they produce different psychologies when you step away from drawing.
Yeah.
And I think the more healthy one is the physical, where it's like you kind of have to accept the mistakes and do your best with them.
Yeah.
And there's like an actual price to be paid if you don't. You throw it out, your material's lost. And then you get into that digital space and it's just like frictionless, groundless.
Yeah.
You can kind of delve into your neuroses or get it where I don't know. It's interesting to think what that does to you when you leave,
Yeah. So I kind of lost track of this like over the past couple of years, but I did, when I came back to my analog painting again, I realized what that was. Because when I first came into Midnight Gospel, the thing I kept trying to tell everybody was like, there were people who were, lifetime digital artists working on that show. And I would look at their files, their Photoshop files, and it would be 800 layers to 1,000 layers of like hue shift, like all that kind of stuff. And I would look at it, I'm like, I'm not going to tell this person not to do this, because that would be crazy for me to say, oh, the way you've been doing this your whole life, like just stop doing this. But I remember just trying to encourage everyone to follow their first impulse. I'm not going to tell you to change this over and over again. It's like, to me, I would equate it to the samurai, or like a Western showdown, like where you draw your gun and you shoot once, or you draw your sword and you strike one time. It should be like your first or second shot, basically. You should get it. And because that's where, like we said, like that's where the vital inspiration comes from. And if you trust yourself enough, most times you're going to be right. Your first guess is probably right.
I do think they interact with different spirits in that sense. They're they produce different results, and like even if they're subtly imperceivable for one drawing, I think over the course of a show or a movie, they create a completely different outcome.
Yeah.
So if like Miyazaki didn't do a lot of hand drawn, I don't think his movies would literally be the same story, etc.
There's also similarly, like I used to hear, I when I hear stuff like this, I guess it's like what do you call it? What they call it? Bias. What is when you're looking for the answers that you want to hear? Kind of a
confirmation bias.
Yeah, confirmation bias. So I'll hear these examples of, Miyazaki just boarding straight through his whole movie without revising anything, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I'll hear about like Clint Eastwood when he directs, he only does 2 takes. You know,
2
so,
takes.
yeah, he won't do more than 2 takes. Usually it's like first take or whatever, you know, that kind of thing. And I think Herzog is kind of like that too.
Based on the amount of movies Herzog has, it probably makes sense.
Yeah. Herzog doesn't shoot coverage, like that kind of stuff, you know? So I hear that kind of stuff, and that makes me think, oh, he just knows what he wants. Why would he shoot extra that he doesn't want, that he didn't envision when he imagined the scene? And there's the people who cover everything, like they hue shift everything, right? And you dial it in that way, but which you can get some nice stuff doing that. But I think what you get is, I think you get a refined illustration, but you don't get the thing that has that. You can achieve beauty, but you can't achieve vitality, I think.
Because vitality is a byproduct of confidence.
Yeah.
So it kind of has to just squirt out of you in a weird way.
Yeah, which is maybe why a lot of my subject matter has to do with squirting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you know much about Eiermann. You know Eiermann?
Eiermann?
No. Yeah, you should look into him. Like, I think I won't get too deep into it, but I think that's the spirit that controls a lot of digital work. Eiermann is like largely Rudolf Steiner talks about him, but
how do you spell that?
Ahri.
Oh, Ahriman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the calcifying digital spirit that, at least how Steiner puts it, is like Christ is in the middle and Satan is on the one side and Ahrimann's on the other side, and Satan's like a kind of hedonic, liberated spirit, not in a good or bad way. Well, pretty much a bad way, and then Ahrimann's like this, like kind of weird, tight, calcifying, just like I like dry, cold, binary force. I kind of think of it as like that. Like, I wonder if you can create something beyond the binary when you use things that run on code, you know? Right. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, that makes me think of, I have an image in my mind. Well, it came from, I saw this C.S. Lewis play called The Great Divorce. Do you know that play?
Yeah, I'm actually a big fan of C.S. Lewis. Is that The Great Divorce? Is that the one that's about the afterlife?
Yeah, it's about a guy. It's a one-man play about a guy who's in purgatory, and just him describing his life in purgatory.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, that's not what I was thinking. I was thinking of not The Great Divorce, but That Hideous Strength. Sorry.
No, I don't know that.
The third book in his sci-fi trilogy, the Parallel.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I've never read it. I hear it's interesting, though.
The second book, so there's Out of the Silent Planet is the first one, Paralandra is the second one, and That Hideous Strength is the third one. And Paralandra is, my memory of it is that it was a mind-blowing book. Great book. And then That Hideous Strength is like, goes a little bit too far into C.S. Lewis, just like mansplaining, how everything should be. It's basically like cranky old man, basically pissed at the way the world was turning out in his lifetime. But there's an image in there. The story is this guy is working for this corporation or whatever, and everyone there is this just completely devil-minded, corporate culture kind of stuff. And in the basement, whenever I think about Netflix and like algorithmic entertainment, like all that kind of stuff, in that story, in The Hideous Strength, there's a basement with this head. There's a head in a box, like someone's beheaded, decapitated head in a box, that's channeling the voice of Satan. And that's
Channeling the voice of Satan.
yeah, like some devil is speaking through this head in this box, and that's where everyone gets their like um, that's like basically the head CEO of the company is this 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 head that's like regurgitating, like lifelessly regurgitating Satan's orders, you know.
Interesting.
So whenever I think of how Netflix decides their programming and what stays on and what gets, you know, like what stars they want to be in their next TV shows that they're producing or whatever, I think of this this decapitated head in the Netflix basement. That's like just like spouting out ones and zeros, like data, basically algorithmic data.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be like actually Satan. It's like what you're saying. It's like this like complete material, because you could interpret Satan or the devil as like being completely just like the end result of like total materialistic thinking. Yeah. So I don't know. I personally, I feel the disconnect when I'm trying to write on a computer, like typing a script or something, and I feel the disconnect a little bit when I'm drawing on a Cintiq. But I've definitely gotten used to it.
Same.
And there are definitely like speed advantages to working that way that have like helped me over the years.
And that's addictive because like ultimately if you're after interesting images and ideas, and you're less romantic about like the smell and touch of paint, you probably want more images over your life, you know.
It's hard to, I don't know. At some point, the industry gave me no choice and told me I had to work on a computer. And so then I just made the switch. The thing I was thinking of, the thing I'm always wary of is seeing some of my favorite artists in my lifetime make that switch and watching their work decline. So people like Richard Corbin.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And Simon Beasley. And who else?
There's several animators I can think of that has caused that problem to me.
I mean, even I follow him on Instagram, so I don't want to be mean, but the dude, what's his name? He did all the background paintings for that Ralph Bakshi movie, Cool World. He's done like so many.
That's funny. I was just about to mention Bakshi because he's such a instance of like low budget restriction where if he had been unleashed and like, because I think making things digitally is much cheaper, I'm assuming. Or if he could just like AI generate backgrounds, you would lose the magic of these completely ridiculous scenes that are like 3 minutes long of a guy snapping with a song playing or you know, like that's what makes his work interesting is
how like ramshackle it is basically.
It's just like desperate and dirty and weird.
I coming over from Philadelphia, I mean I grew up on Bakshi's films. So when I came to LA, where most of the people I was hanging out with went to CalArts or some similar animation program, whenever I would talk about Bakshi, people would sort of like laugh at me. Like, I think they thought most people I would talk to just hated rotoscoping and all that kind of stuff. But to me, I don't know not really understanding, like being an insider in that process. To me, I was just like the jankier it looks, the more interesting it is, you know? So I always loved like Wizards, Bakshi's Wizards to me was like, man, that was like my childhood basically.
That's a good film. Very weird.
And all the rotoscoping in the Lord of the Rings film was like
ridiculous.
It just burned itself into my consciousness. I don't know.
And I bet it's the stuff that I'm pretty sure there's an anecdote in which he just ran out of money, so he just filmed people in cloaks in that one. I think it's the Nazgul. They're just like silhouetted horse riding.
Yeah. But I don't know. To me, that's a successful film. Like I love the way it looks. But,
and he's forced into that discomfort by reality itself, financial reality in that instance. But
yeah,
that's what I often wonder is like I'm working on a book and I'm using a Cintiq, and I don't know what it would be if I was doing it off that, but I suspect it would be better. It's just I'm honest about the convenience of the whole damn thing, you know?
Yeah, I try not to be whatever, like I try to be pretty open-minded and just like open to easier ways of doing things and stuff like that, as long as it doesn't diminish, as long as I think I'm still making good shit. Sure. I try not to make weird sort of morality decisions about my mediums and stuff like that. I think as long as it's in some way being honest with itself about what medium I'm using and that kind of thing.
Sure.
And because, like I said, like I think, and I just try to assess it. I look at my analog work, I look at my digital work, and I'm like, is this as good as my analog work on its own terms, you know? Like
That's
I
fair.
could think of, for example, Batman, the graphic novel, Frank Miller graphic novel, Batman Strikes Bat. What is it called? Batman.
Is that Batman Returns?
It's the Dark Knight 2. It's like there's Batman.
The coloring is amazing in that book.
Right, the second one that Frank Miller's wife colored.
Yeah.
At the dawn of Photoshop, basically, is on its own terms this beautiful work of art. You know, this beautiful approach to digital coloring.
Well, there was a time where digital was digital. By that I mean aesthetically, and then even like there's CG moments of the 90s where I'm like, oh, that's the peak of CG because it is honest about what it is. Like Jurassic Park is like very good looking at times, and then it's more the convergence with visual reality that's kind of I don't know. There's some strange imitation at play that starts to undermine each other in a sense.
I think that's what I'm talking about, like making choices. So, I think calling attention to the medium you're working in and then making bold choices, as long as you're doing that, I think, and not just trying to overwork something to the point that I don't know, you can. Yeah, it's like that thing where you diminish I think I already said that. You diminish the vitality, but you're creating these like hyper rendered, I don't know, essentially like corporate, like office art kind of thing, you know? I don't know.
Sure.
Like you master the digital painting medium so much that your art doesn't matter anymore, kind of like it's almost too good or something.
Sure, it's like pure technique. It's like the spirit of technique, which I think is like a calcifying force actually when it's taken to an extreme.
Yeah, because I think if you really have ideas, you're going to stop at a certain point. You're going to say, "This is done." You know, this thing is done. Whereas someone who is just a pure technician would keep going. If that makes sense.
It does. It actually. Reminds me of a Miyazaki notion that like he wished he saw Mobius's work earlier so he could have absorbed it into his style more. Yeah. And I don't know, that struck me as deeply mature that he was just like, all right, style's done. Got to work on other shit. He's probably like 30 years old or something. And he was already like, nope, that's my visual style. And like, I need to find other ways. Maybe the story, like Nausicaa's pretty clearly looks like some Mobius shit going on. Yeah. To like ingest and like this whole thing is cut off for now. I think that's really admirable in a certain way.
Yeah, I mean, exposure to Mobius really fucked a lot of people up. So,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah. You can't, like, there's a certain level, like, you could never. I think that's something my friend Tom Herpick actually said to me. It's like nobody can, you just can't, if you try to copy him too much, you're just going to be a second rate Mobius, you know? Nobody's ever going to be as good. So
It's true.
you might as well just don't try to copy Mobius. Like, it's not worth it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, to wrap it up, actually, you got any jokes? I used to like to end it with a joke, but so many
Yeah.
people don't have jokes anymore that it started to become demoralizing. We don't have to get into that, but I think there's, in respect to like that deadness of the world,
Yeah.
uh, it's crazy. I'll ask people to tell me a joke often, and it'll just be like, I don't know a joke. It's almost like dystopian.
Yeah. I mean, I do know some jokes. Yeah, there was a joke about like Cheetos. I used to tell.
You got
It's
it?
so bad.
Yeah, I like bad jokes.
All right. This is like a. I don't even know how to deliver this joke right, but I'll just give you the sense of it, basically. It's like this guy goes to this doctor and he's like, Doctor, help me. My penis is orange. And the doctor said, Oh, let me take a look. And so he pulls down his pants and he looks at the guy's penis, and the doctor's like, Oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like this in my medical history. Your penis is completely orange. And he's like, this joke is so bad. And then he goes, what do you do? What do you do? And he's like, I just hang out and eat Cheetos and jerk off all day.
Okay. That's good. I like it. It's very visual.
At some point in my life when I was like 12, when I heard that joke, it had a punchline and made sense. But no one's ever told me that joke again, so it's like become a weird self whisper down the lane.
That's not, you don't know if that's the punchline?
I don't know. Yeah.
I think it works.
Okay. But it doesn't work. Like, why would he all of a sudden have an orange penis? And if all he does is jerk off and eat Cheetos all day, he would have had an orange penis for a long time.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you got to go to the doctor eventually, I think.
Something about this joke doesn't track. I don't know.
Well, all right. So you're looking for $2.5 million to start a studio, right?
Yeah, I mean, I basically have started the studio. I'm making a short film called Jesus 2.
I saw that.
Yeah, and it's going to be done in January. So it's
Nice.
sort of a co-production between my upstart studio. I'm just going to say I have one. I mean, I started an LLC.
Okay, what's that called?
Studio Picatrix.
Picatrix.
Yeah. And it's in collaboration with this other, because I've been working with this producer named Aaron, who's basically saving my ass and helping me make this thing. And he has his own production studio, so I'm sure he'll want to put his production studio's name on it. But it'll be my first calling card to be like, hey, I can make stuff, you know?
Nice.
And then I'm hoping that from there I can use that as a calling card to like generate investment interest and all that kind of stuff into making weirdo, stories that I want to make, and then hopefully be able to bring other people on board who have stuff they would like to make, but no one else wants to help fund, that kind of thing. That's sort of the dream, I guess.
Nice.
Is a place for all the people who don't belong, but that I think there is actually an audience for.
Sure.
You see things get through every once in a while, and then people are like freak out,
For sure.
So I think those people I think maybe not as many people that would go see Top Gun Maverick or whatever, you know.
You never know. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think there's enough to sustain that sort of like niche pocket of stuff that doesn't have to be, following the like save the cat kind of stuff.
So people should be looking out for Jesus 2, and Forming should be wrapping up soon.
Yeah, probably in like 6 months, Forming will be done, I hope. And then hopefully my publisher still wants to put it out. We'll see.
Right
It's like running about 7 years late, so
I'm sure they will.
yeah.
Well, good to meet you, and thank you for your time.
Nice to meet you, man. Take it easy.
Music by Dory Bavarsky and Mingja Chen. Next up, we have Andre Baum. Enjoy your week.
Jesse Moynihan.